in the name of Allah, most gracious, most merciful, today I want to talk about how to join the army of Mahdi and what are its prerequisites. Now, see, this is what's going to happen. Very quickly, inshallah. I don't want to take too much time, but I do want to discuss this in different lectures to talk more, expand more and more about it. But basically, look, this system is going to collapse. The dollar is going to collapse. This monetary system that we have and the system that we have today in the world, it's on a house of cards, right? Paper money cannot exist forever. Paper money has no value. It's going to fall. I have a lot of lectures on this, but it's just a matter of time. You know, when a country has a $38 trillion debt, when you get to a point in debt where the debt can't even be repaid, the system's going to fall. And if the dollar will fall, everything else will fall, and it will lead to many wars. Now, this is why it is extremely important. If you read studies of Al-Kahf, it becomes extremely interesting, and it becomes very clear that, look, the Ashab al-Kahf, they left the city to be in the cave. I've mentioned this a couple of times, but I'm just going over some basic stuff to talk about some other important stuff. You have to learn how to live off the grid, or you will be forced to learn how to live off the grid. And don't think you can do this with your knowledge only alone. Of course you can use your knowledge, but you have to be at the right place at the right time to have rizq. Right? You have to be at the right... that will only happen by your connection to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That will only happen if you say, رَبَّنَا آتِنَا مِن لَدُنْكَ رَحْمَةً وَهَيِّئْ لَنَا مِنْ أَمْرِنَا رَشَدًا, dua in Surah Al-Kahf. Anyway, so you have to first learn to live off the grid. You have to learn to be Ashab al-Kahf. The second test will... and when you are there as Ashab al-Kahf, you will have two major tests. Okay, the first test is the people of the man of the garden, right? The man of the garden, he has a garden and he's so happy with his garden. You're going to be outside the city, outside the grid. You're going to be living a life of a poor person, and those people that gave into Dajjal and that system, the New World Order system, right? Those people that gave into him, that city, what did the Ashab al-Kahf do? They were outside the city, but they went into the city to get food. So what was said to them? فَلْيَتَلَطَّفْ, be careful. وَلَا يُشْعِرَنَّ بِكُمْ أَحَدًا, let no one find out who you are. وَلَا يُشْعِرَنَّ بِكُمْ أَحَدًا, and if they find out who you are, يَرْجُمُوكُمْ أَوْ يُعِيدُكُمْ فِي مِلَّتِهِمْ وَلَنْ تُفْلِحُوا إِذًا أَبَدًا. If they find out who you are, they're going to force you to stay with them. They're going to force you to stay, right? And then, if you give in to them, you'll never be successful, right? Or they'll kill you. So, you have to be careful when you have your off-the-grid spot and you're going into the cities. You're going to have to be very careful how you interact with them. وَلَا يُشْعِرَنَّ بِكُمْ أَحَدًا, let no one find out who you are, because otherwise they'll force you back. And then a mu'min will be stopping his mother and his sister and his family members from being so attracted. They're going to be like, look, they're living such a good life there. They've given into... why can't we live within that system? Right? The Dajjal's going to show you Jannah. And he's going to show... if you're outside this Jannah, it's like you're in the fire. Right? These are the sayings of the Prophet ﷺ. And if you go into... why can't we just... we'll pretend we're not Muslims. We'll pretend we're quote-unquote liberal Muslims or moderate Muslims or any other type of Muslim. We'll pretend we're a different type of Muslim, but let's take advantage of the system, right? And then there will be those believers that will say, no, we're not going to compromise now. That's it. They're going to find their off-the-grid spot. They're going to trust in Allah, and they're going to live day to day in trusting in Allah. So the first test will be like the man in the garden. The second test will be like Musa and Khidr. Now, one thing I want to mention about Musa and Khidr that's extremely important. People sometimes think, you know, when they read the story, that Khidr has an upper hand over Musa a.s. Let it be known, in terms of our Aqidah and in terms of Sharia, we believe Nabi Musa a.s. is a Rasul of Allah. He has a higher position. He is of those that Allah says, Ulul Azam min al-Rasul. He is of those determined people. And I'm going to talk about this in a second. Khidr is a man of Allah. Surah Al-Kahf talks about Allah helping the non-prophets. So Zulqarnain, non-prophet. Khidr, non-prophet. The man who was with the man of the garden, a non-prophet. The Ashab al-Kahf, non-prophet. Because these events are about a time where there will be no prophet of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Anyway, so I was saying that you then need the personality of Musa, but you also need the personality of Khidr. Musa ﷺ was an extremely, extremely determined personality, a person who did not give up, right? This is seen in many times within this one story that we read about Musa and Khidr. For example, Musa ﷺ, we know him for his jalal, but even within this story, it starts off by him saying, look, I'm not going to stop walking till I reach my destination. He went and he went and he went until he was tired, right? And then he walked all the way back. Then he told Khidr ﷺ, Musa ﷺ told Khidr ﷺ that, look, I won't ask you any questions, right? But he couldn't keep himself because he was a strong personality. He was determined. When he saw something wrong, he was going to say it. He said, قَتَلْتَ نَفْسًا زَكِيَّةً بِغَيْرِ. Why'd you kill this soul? For no reason, right? خَرَقْتَهَا. You destroyed this boat for what reason? Musa is a strong personality. He can't stay quiet. But Khidr had the opposite. He was quiet. He was calm. It was like he was sitting on a rock, right? He was solid, right? He had sabr. He had an understanding and a wisdom that everything is happening for a reason. You have to build both of the Majma al-Bahr. This is the place where the two oceans meet, the two oceans of knowledge, right? So Musa ﷺ is the knowledge of the Sharia of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and the kalam of Allah, because Musa was kalimullah. And the other thing that I want to mention, that normal situation, from the story it's evident, the normal situation of Musa ﷺ, where he could talk to Allah at any time, was put on pause. Now Allah is not going to teach you. Khidr, a servant of Allah, is going to teach you, right? Because they asked Musa ﷺ, who's the most knowledgeable person, and Musa said, of course I am, because he's talking to Allah. It's like, it's like having access to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right? People nowadays, they search Google. Of course, I can know everything. All I have to do is search Google and I'll know it. Well, Musa had Allah, which is, of course, there's no comparison with Google, right? So, but Allah didn't appreciate this statement of Musa ﷺ. And mind you, no matter how much you're prepared, no matter how much knowledge you have, you're going to have to know that Allah knows things and Allah does things, and you're going to need Allah's help in things you don't know. You just don't know. For example, you may be outside the grid and you don't have food. You're going to have a relationship with Allah to make sure you get that food, because that relationship is what's going to bring you that food, that rizq, that survival, that strength, right? That forbearance and that sabr at that time. So Khidr ﷺ is a man who can tell you about the future and can tell you about the events. I didn't mean future, particularly I mean events. So how do we Muslims, in the time of being off the grid, after the collapse of this system, when we're not compromising with Dajjal, how do we know about the events that are occurring? We use the prophecies of the Prophet. We use the prophecies of the Prophet ﷺ to know what's happening around us, to have that wisdom that no one else could have unless you knew the Quran and Sunnah and that part of Islam that very few people are paying attention to, right? Even amongst the Islamic scholarship, very few people are paying attention to Islamic eschatology and how it's telling us about the events and as they are unfolding to where they are unfolding. It's like Khidr telling you. It's like the events are happening, you don't know why, but Khidr is telling you at the end why they are happening. Right? When he tells Musa ﷺ at the end why they happened. So the personality and determination of Musa ﷺ, the sabr and the hilm of Khidr. Okay? And number two, the knowledge of Musa of Sharia, the do's and the don'ts and the halal and the haram, but then the internal light, the nur in the heart of Khidr. Okay, so Musa ﷺ and Khidr. This is Majma al-Bahr, where the two meet together. Right? And so you need to pass the test of the man in the garden, that you're not so dazzled by the garden that you want to go back to the city. And number two, you have worked on your inner self. You've worked on that determination, the determination of the prophets of the Prophet. Like Musa ﷺ had such strong determination, right? Nothing could stop him from what he is determined to do. But having that calmness and that internal nur of Khidr, okay? And then this is what I want to talk about. Then you will be in this situation outside the grid. Allah will develop this personality for you. There will be a filtering of the true believers from those that give in and compromise, okay? And then what happens? You're going to hear one day the Prophet said, when you hear of the man that is given allegiance, or you hear of the Mahdi, or you hear, of the according to another narration, when you hear of the Roman armies that got sucked into the sand, right? When you hear of Mahdi, the Prophet says, go to him even if you have to crawl to give him bay'ah, right? When you hear about the justice of this man, meaning the next person, right? Next person mentioned in Surah Al-Kahf after Khidr and Musa is Dhul Qarnayn, a man of justice, a man of Allah who establishes justice wherever he goes, and Allah gives him وَآتَيْنَاهُ مِنْ كُلِّ شَيْءٍ سَبَبًا. We gave him the power to do all things. When Allah will give this army and this man, the Mahdi, Muhammad bin Abdullah, when you hear of him and how he's had success, then your job is not only to move away from Dajjal, right? But then your next job is, now that you have freed yourself from the clutches of Dajjal, to go and do hijrah. When you hear about him, to be ready to make that hijrah with you and your family members and your brothers and sisters in community. Of course, within your village or your cave or land, you have your Jama'ah, your Amir, and so on and so forth. But when you hear of the Mahdi, you have to make hijrah to him, to join his army, to join him, and to become part of that great Islamic renaissance that is going to happen, to remove the batil, to remove the falsehood, to remove the New World Order, and to re-establish Khilafah ala minhaj an-Nabuwah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. So basically, what have I said? I have said that this system's going to collapse. I've already many videos about this, right? And you can look this up in my channel. Inshallah, subscribe to me, like, comment. Let's talk about this. We need to join hands. Like-minded people need to come. The people that can see the obvious, that this system is going down, and understand that it's going to be replaced with something far worse. That understand that we need to have our own cave, like the Ashabul Kahf. The people that understand that this is going to be a very tough situation for Muslims, but in the end it will develop in us those personalities, that we need to be part of the Mahdi's army. It will develop in us that determination, but yet that wisdom, right? And materialism will not dazzle us. Big gardens and big cities won't dazzle us as much, right? And we'll be ready for harsh life. And then when you hear of the Mahdi, then you have to make hijrah to him. That once you have وَاعْتَزَلْتُمُوهُمْ, when you have done i'tizal from Dajjal and that system, then at that time, right? Because first, when the system collapses, it's going to be about chaos. I also want to make this clear. It'll be all chaos and chaos, but it's going to be replaced by something that's much worse than what was before that. Now, when you have separated from them and you've created your own little Jama'ah, your own Muslim village, right? Then from there, you have to prepare yourself for that time when you're going to make hijrah to Jazirat al-Arab, to meet the Mahdi, to join the army of the Mahdi. And then when you hear of him, then you start making your journey to him, regardless of how dangerous it is. You start making your journey to him, even if it means you have to crawl over ice to give him bay'ah, as the Prophet said. Mustadrak Hakim and other muhaddithin have recorded this hadith, and it meets the criteria of Sahih, both by Imam Bukhari and Muslim. So, this is what I wanted to say. Please subscribe to my videos so that I can, and watch my other videos on this subject of Ya'juj and Ma'juj and Dajjal, and where I talk about personality issues, because we're going to have a certain type of personality to survive this, and it's not just a matter of survival, right? Because everyone has to ultimately die. But it's good if you're surviving and you're able to get some of your family members, your children, to join the army of the Mahdi, to be with the Mahdi for the revival of the Khilafah ala minhaj an-Nabuwah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala have mercy on all of us. I hope, inshallah, all of you do subscribe, or a lot of you, inshallah, subscribe to my channel, and that we can make khair out of this, good out of this. And inshallah ta'ala, Jazakumullah khairan. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Thank you very much.